This week there is no classroom session. I am away, and rather than ask a colleague to deliver material he did not design, we are doing it a better way. You watch 3 recordings in your own time, and you submit 1 page of work before week 5. 3 things about how this runs. First, watch the 3 recordings in order. The second one depends on the first, and the third one depends on the second. They are about 15 minutes each, so the whole week is under an hour of viewing. Second, the work is a reverse outline of a paper. Not any paper. The paper you already chose in week 3, the one you are appraising for assignment 1. You are not being given a new task. You are being given the first half of the task you already have. Third, submit before week 5. Week 5 takes the introduction apart in detail, and it assumes you arrive with this outline in your hand. Let me be direct about what has and has not been cancelled. The session is cancelled. The work is not. In a normal week, you would spend 3 hours in a room doing this with me looking over your shoulder. This week you spend 1 hour watching and 1 hour working, and nobody is looking over your shoulder. That is a smaller cost in time and a larger cost in discipline. Here is the shape of the week. Recording 1 asks what each section of a paper is actually for, not what goes in it, which you already know, but what job it does in an argument, and what it promises the other sections. Recording 2 teaches a single procedure called the reverse outline. It is the most useful editing tool I know. It takes 20 minutes to learn, and almost nobody in this department has been taught it. Recording 3 is where the 2 come together. I will show you 5 ways an argument breaks, all of them invisible when you read a paper forwards, and all of them obvious the moment you have an outline in front of you. Recording 3 is the one your submission comes from, so if you are short of time this week, do not skip to it. It will not make sense without the other 2. Segment 1. What each section is for. Let me start with the thing that most first drafts get wrong, and it is not a matter of style. A paper is not a report of what you did in the order you did it. If it were, the honest structure of most research would be, I tried something, it failed, I tried something else, that also failed, then I read a paper from 1994 and tried a third thing, and that worked but only on Tuesdays. That is the history of the work. Nobody wants it, and more importantly nobody can check it. What a paper is an argument, a claim about the world, with the evidence for that claim, arranged so that a reader who has never met you and does not trust you can decide whether to believe it. Everything about him follows from that one sentence. The 4 sections are not 4 boxes to fill. They are 4 jobs in a single argument, and each one exists because a skeptical reader needs it. Here are the 4 jobs. The introduction establishes that a specific question is worth answering, and that it has not been answered yet. Notice both halves, worth answering, and not yet answered. An introduction that only does the first half tells the reader your field is important. It does not tell them why this paper needs to exist. The methods make the answer checkable. That is the whole job. The test of a method section is not whether it describes what you did, it is whether a competent stranger with your equipment could do it again and find out whether you are right. If they cannot, the paper is not science, it is testimony. The results state what was observed, nothing about what it means. This is the hardest discipline in the 4, and I will come back to it. The discussion converts observation into claim, and it states the boundary of that claim. Both halves again, what you now believe, and where you stop believing it. Hold on to the idea that these are job descriptions. Most structural problems in a manuscript are one section doing another section's job, and they survive review by copy editors and supervisors because each individual sentence is fine. Now the part that matters more than the job descriptions, the sections make promises to each other, and those promises can be audited. 1. Every aim stated in the introduction is answered in the results. If your introduction ends by saying you will investigate 3 things, a reader will count 3 answers. If there are 2, that is a broken promise, and it is a broken promise whether you ran out of time, ran out of samples, or simply forgot. 2. Every number in the results is produced by something described in the methods. A reader encountering a value in your results should be able to go back and find the instrument, the sample, the calculation. 3. Every claim in the discussion traces back to a specific result, not to the literature, not to what everybody knows, and not to what you believe about your own system, to a result in this paper. 4. Nothing new appears in the discussion. No new data, no new measurement, no method you did not mention. Here is what makes these 4 powerful. You can check every one of them without understanding the chemistry. A reviewer in a hurry, and every reviewer is in a hurry, checks these before they check anything technical. So can you, on your own draft, before you send it. 3 trespasses, in order of how often I see them. Results that interpret a sentence like, the improvement is attributed to a more uniform interface. Read it carefully. Nothing was observed. Attribution is an act of interpretation, and it belongs in the discussion, where a reader knows to be skeptical of it. Put it in results, and you have smuggled a claim past the reader while they were reading data. A discussion that reports 3 paragraphs that walk through the figures again in the same order. The reader has already read the figures. A discussion that restates them has no job. It takes up 2 pages and answers no question. This is the single most common weakness in the drafts I read in this department. Methods that argue. This technique was chosen because it is superior to the alternative. That is a justification, and justifications live in the introduction. The methods answer how, not why. And notice the property all 3 share. Every individual sentence is fine, grammatically correct, technically accurate, professionally phrased. You cannot catch these by reading carefully. You catch them by looking at structure, which is what the next recording is about. One more thing before the procedure, and it is a useful shortcut. The abstract is the same argument compressed into 1 paragraph, 2 sentences of context and problem, 1 sentence of method, 2 sentences of findings with numbers in them, and 1 sentence of meaning with a boundary on it. That is why a well-built abstract is a fast way to test a paper's architecture, including your own. If you sit down to compress your paper into those 6 sentences and you cannot do it, the problem is almost never the abstract. It is that one of the 4 jobs is not being done anywhere in the paper. Try this on the paper you chose. If you find yourself unable to write the 4th and 5th sentences without vague words like improved or enhanced, that paper may not have a result you can state. That is worth knowing before you spend a week appraising it. So that is segment 1. 4 jobs, 4 promises, 3 trespasses, and now the problem. Everything I have just described is a property of the whole paper, and you cannot see a property of the whole paper while you are reading it forward, 1 sentence at a time. Reading is sequential and structure is not. That is why the next 15 minutes exist. There is a procedure that makes structure visible. It is simple enough to describe in 1 slide, and it will change how you read for the rest of your career. Take a break here if you want one. Then start segment 2. Segment 2. The reverse outline. Here is the definition, and the distinction inside it is the whole point. A reverse outline is an outline you write backwards, from a text that already exists. 1 line per paragraph, and that line records what the paragraph does, not what it says. The difference sounds small and it is not. If I summarize a paragraph, I write something like, this paragraph is about zinc dendrite formation. That is content. It tells me the topic. It tells me nothing about whether the paragraph is in the right place, or whether it duplicates the one before it. If I record function, I write, narrows a general problem to a specific one. Now I have something structural. And when I look at the next line and it says, narrows a general problem to a specific one, I have found a duplicated move, which I could never have seen by reading. So the discipline is, every line starts with a verb, and the verb describes the paragraph's job in the argument. 5 steps. Write these down, because you are going to do them this week. Step 1. Number the paragraphs, in the margin of a printout, or as a numbered list in a document. From here on you refer to paragraphs by number, and that alone changes how precisely you can talk about a text. Step 2. For each paragraph, write its function in 10 words or fewer, starting with a verb. The 10-word limit is not decoration. If you cannot say what a paragraph does in 10 words, that is diagnostic information. The paragraph is doing more than one job, and it should probably be 2 paragraphs. Step 3. Tag each line with which of the 4 jobs it serves. Introduction, methods, results or discussion. And here is the important part, tag it by the job it actually does, not by the section heading it happens to be printed under. A paragraph in the results section that interprets gets tagged discussion. That mismatches the finding. Step 4. Collapse. Take all the lines for one section, read them together, and write a single line for the section as a whole. If you cannot, the section does not have one job. Step 5. Close the paper and read only your outline. This is the step people skip, and it is the step where the work pays off. Everything wrong with the architecture is now on one page in front of you, and none of it is hidden behind good prose. You will need verbs, so here is a working vocabulary. 7 pairs: establishes, or situates. The paragraph puts the work in a context the reader already accepts. Narrows, or specifies. It moves from a general area to a particular question. In a healthy introduction you should see this verb 2 or 3 times, each time getting tighter. Reports, or quantifies. It states an observation. Justifies, or motivates. It gives a reason for a choice. Contrasts, or reconciles. It sets 2 findings against each other, or resolves a disagreement between them. Concedes, or bounds. It admits a limit. Claims, or attributes. It asserts a mechanism or an explanation. 2 notes on using these. If your only verbs are discusses, describes and presents, you are summarizing, not outlining. Those 3 words fit any paragraph ever written, which is exactly why they are useless. And if you find yourself writing claims against a paragraph inside the results section, stop and mark it, because you have just found a trespass. Let me do one. This is an introduction I constructed for this exercise, 6 paragraphs, and all you are seeing is the outline. Paragraph 1 establishes that grid storage demand is growing. Paragraph 2 narrows to aqueous zinc as a low-cost option. Paragraph 3 reports that dendrites limit zinc anode lifetime. Paragraph 4 reviews electrolyte additives as a mitigation. Paragraph 5 narrows to aqueous zinc as a low-cost option. Paragraph 6 states the aim: screen for additives at high current density. Now stop and look at that list rather than listening to me. 6 lines, no chemistry in any of them, and one of them is a problem. Paragraph 5 has the same function as paragraph 2. The argument has already narrowed to aqueous zinc. Narrowing to it again means the paper walks the reader back up the funnel and down it a second time. Here is what I want you to notice about how you found it. You did not need to know anything about zinc. You did not read a single sentence of the actual paper. You looked at a list of 6 verbs and you saw a repeat. That took about 4 seconds, and no amount of careful reading would have surfaced it, because paragraph 5 was probably beautifully written and full of citations. So what should the outline of a healthy introduction look like? 5 moves, in this order: establishes a context the reader already accepts, not a context you have to argue for. If your first paragraph is already controversial, the reader has nowhere to stand. Narrows, once or twice, each time tighter. Once is often too fast. 4 times is a review article. Reports what is known, and then what is not. Those are 2 different moves and they usually take 2 paragraphs. States the gap. And here is where I want you to be strict with yourself, because this is the same distinction that broke sentence 2 of your 60-second pitch in week 1, and the same one we used on the evidence matrix last week. A gap is a cost, not an absence. Not, little work has been done on this, but, because nobody has measured this, we cannot predict that. States the aim, in terms the results can actually answer. If the aim says understand the mechanism, no result can settle it. If the aim says determine which of 4 additives sustains capacity at 10 milliamps per square centimeter, every result either does or does not. When you outline your chosen paper this week, check it against these 5. Most published introductions have all 5. The ones that do not are usually missing number 4. Now the same procedure on a discussion, because the discussion is the other section you have to submit, and it fails in different ways from an introduction. 6 paragraphs again. Paragraph 1 restates the main finding. Paragraph 2 attributes the effect to a more uniform interface. Paragraph 3 compares the result with 2 earlier studies. Paragraph 4 restates the main finding, with different wording. Paragraph 5 concedes that only symmetric cells were tested. Paragraph 6 proposes future work on full cells. Look at the list before I say anything else. There are 2 findings in it. The first is a doubled move. Paragraph 4 does the same job as paragraph 1. In a discussion this is extremely common, and there is a reason for it. Paragraph 1 was written first, then the author wrote the comparison, and by the time they reached paragraph 4 they had lost track and restated the headline again. The paper is a page longer than it needs to be and the reader is being told the same thing twice in the same section. The second is subtler and more serious. Paragraph 2 attributes the effect to a uniform interface. If you tag that line honestly, the verb is attributes, which is a claim. Now ask the question from segment 1, which result does that claim rest on? If the paper never measured the interface, the answer is none, and you have found an unsupported claim. Notice that paragraphs 5 and 6 are doing their jobs properly, concedes, and proposes. A discussion that ends with a real concession and a specific piece of future work is a discussion whose author knew where their evidence stopped. One practical point before we move on, because everybody hits it within the first 10 paragraphs. Sometimes the line will not fit in 10 words. Do not fight it, and do not stretch the limit. When a line refuses to fit, the outline is telling you something about the text. 3 versions of this. If your line has 2 verbs in it, establishes the context and reviews the additives, the paragraph is doing 2 jobs. In a well-built paper it would be 2 paragraphs. Write both verbs down, on 2 lines, with the same paragraph number, and mark it. That is a finding in itself. If you cannot find a verb you are happy with at all, the paragraph may be doing no job. This sounds harsh and it happens more than you would expect, usually in the 3rd or 4th paragraph of an introduction. Ask yourself directly, what would be lost if this paragraph were deleted? If the honest answer is nothing, you have found something worth reporting. And if your line ends up longer and more detailed than the paragraph seems to deserve, that is often a literature review paragraph that wandered into the argument. It has content but no function. In every one of these 3 cases the useful move is the same. Write down what happened, and keep going. Do not stop to fix the paper. You are diagnosing, not editing. That is the procedure. It is genuinely this simple, and the 2 rules that make it work are the 2 people most often break. 10 words or fewer, and start with a verb that names a job, not a topic. If you outline your paper with lines like, this paragraph discusses the electrolyte, you will finish the exercise and find nothing, and you will conclude that reverse outlining does not work. It works. Summaries do not. Segment 3 is where we use the outline to find things. 15 minutes. Then you do it on your own paper. Segment 3, where arguments break. 5 breaks. Look at them next to the 4 promises from segment 1, and you will see that they are the same list, seen from the other side. The promises are what a paper owes its reader, the breaks are what happens when it does not pay. The orphan aim, an aim stated in the introduction that no result answers. The unsupported claim, a claim and a discussion with no result behind it. The invisible method, a number and the results that nothing in the methods produces. The doubled move, 2 paragraphs doing the same job, which you saw 4 minutes ago. And the buried gap. The gap arrives in paragraph 5 of the introduction, or in the discussion, or never. I am going to take the first 3 properly, because they are the ones that matter in review, and the ones you are most likely to commit yourself. Break 1. The orphan aim, and this is the most common structural fault in published work. Look at the outline. The introduction, paragraph 6, states 3 aims: screen the additives, identify the mechanism, and assess full cell viability. Go to the results. Screening is reported. Post-mortem imaging is reported. Nothing on full cells. Go to the discussion. It claims a mechanism, and it says nothing about full cells either. Aim 3 is an orphan. It was promised on page 2 and abandoned by page 9, and nowhere does the paper say so. 2 things worth understanding here. First, this is almost never dishonesty. It is what happens when the introduction is written early, the experiment does not finish, and nobody goes back to align the introduction with what the paper ended up containing. Second, it takes a reviewer about 90 seconds to find, because they read the aims, then the figure captions, and count. So the practical instruction is, before you submit anything, put the aims from your introduction next to your figure list and check that each aim has an answer. If one does not, either cut the aim or admit the gap explicitly. Cutting it is usually right. Break 2. The unsupported claim. The discussion, paragraph 3, attributes the improvement to a more uniform interface. Go back to the results. Cycle life is reported. Voltage hysteresis is reported. Surface images are reported. No measurement of the interface exists anywhere in the paper. So where did the claim come from? Usually from 3 places: the literature, the author's physical intuition, and the fact that it is probably true. And I want to be careful here, because this is a point students often miss here. The claim may well be correct, Uniform interfaces really do improve cycling. That is not the issue. The issue is that this paper does not contain the evidence for it, and a discussion is only allowed to spend evidence the paper has actually earned. The fix is not to delete the idea. The fix is to change its grammar. The improvement is attributed to a more uniform interface. But, the improvement is consistent with a more uniform interface, which we did not measure directly. That sentence is honest, it is publishable, and it costs you nothing except the illusion of certainty. When you outline the discussion of your chosen paper, draw an arrow from every claim back to the result it rests on. The claims with no arrow are your finding. Break 3. The invisible method, and this one connects directly to the evidence matrix you built last week. The results report a Coulombic efficiency of 99.4% over 400 cycles. The methods describe cell assembly, electrolyte preparation, and the cycling protocol. What is missing is how efficiency was calculated and what counts as failure. Averaged overall cycles or measured at the end. Failure at 80% of initial capacity or at a short circuit. Why this matters more than it looks? Two papers can report the same number and mean genuinely different things by it. When you tried to put paper C into your matrix last week and found the cells would not fill, this is the mechanism behind that experience. Not carelessness, a missing definition in the methods. So when you outline the methods, do it differently from the other sections. Instead of one line per paragraph, write one line per number that appears in the results, and ask whether the methods tell you how that number was produced. The lines you cannot complete are the invisible methods. Now, how to write one of these down. This matters, because it is what your submission is marked on. A finding has 3 parts: where it is, what the paragraph was doing, and what is missing. Here is a good one. Introduction paragraph 6 states an aim on full cell viability. No result addresses it, and the discussion does not acknowledge the omission. Read that again and notice what it does. It gives a location, so I can go and look. It names the function, so I know what the paragraph was supposed to do, and it says precisely what is absent. I can verify the whole thing in about a minute. Here is a bad one, and it is the sentence most student appraisals are made of. The introduction is not very well connected to the results. That cannot be checked. It cannot be acted on. If I were the author receiving it, I would not know what to change. And, less obviously, it does not demonstrate that you found anything, because you could write that sentence about any paper without reading it. So the rule for your submission is, location, function, what is missing, 3 parts, 1 sentence, every time. One last thing before the assignment, and it is the reason this week exists at all. Everything I have shown you is a diagnostic you run on somebody else's paper, but the real use is on your own. When you have a draft, do not reread it. You cannot read your own draft. You already know what it was supposed to say, and your eye supplies the argument even where the page does not. Outline it instead. 10 words per paragraph, verbs, function not content. Then look at the outline and ask the 5 questions. Every one of these breaks is cheap to fix at outline stage. A doubled move is a deletion. An orphan aim is one sentence cut from the introduction. An unsupported claim is a change of verb. After submission, the same 5 things come back as reviewer comments, and then they cost you 3 months. Here is what you submit, and it is 1 page. 1. The outline itself. Numbered lines for the introduction and the discussion of the paper you already chose in week 3. You do not need to outline the whole paper. 10 words per line, verb first. 2. The collapse. 1 line for the introduction as a whole and 1 for the discussion as a whole. 3. 2 findings, written in the 3-part form. Location, function, what is missing. 2 is the number, not 1, and not 8. 4. The AI declaration form attached, as with every assignment from week 3 onwards. The form is on the course page, and to say it once more, because someone always asks, this is the same paper you are appraising for assignment 1. This page becomes the front half of that appraisal. You are not being given extra work because the class was cancelled. You are being given the first part of the work you already had, with a deadline attached so that it actually gets done. What scores nothing? A summary of the paper. If your lines say discusses, describes, or presents, you have written a summary, and a summary tells me you did not do the exercise. 3 things before week 5. Submit the outline before the week 5 session, not during it. I will have read them. Keep the paper, and bring it printed. Week 5 takes an introduction apart move by move, and it is far better with a paper you have already outlined than with one handed to you cold. And bring the evidence matrix from week 3 as well, because week 5 asks you to write the gap statement your matrix implies. Those two pieces of paper, the outline and the matrix, are the input to that session. I want to be honest about the risk in an asynchronous week. The material is not harder than a normal week, but nobody will notice on the 27th if you have not started, and the first moment it becomes visible is when you sit in the week 5 room without an outline. Do it in the week it belongs to. That is week 4. 3 recordings, 1 page, 1 deadline. See you in week 5. Week 5. Reverse Engineering 2. The Introduction in the Gap. One last thing, and it takes 45 seconds. The same feedback form as every week. Anonymous, no name, no email, no login. 5 questions, and the 4th asks what is still mightiest for you. I use that 4th answer. In a normal week I open the next session by answering the 2 most common ones. This week I want it more than usual, because an asynchronous week is the one I can see least. I cannot watch your faces while I explain the reverse outline, and if the procedure did not land, this form is the only way I will find out before week 5. Scan the code, or the link is on the course page next to the recordings. Do it now, before you close the tab.